The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent except for the hum of translation devices. Ambassador Kim Miho stood alone in the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by representatives from 47 alien species. Above him, holographic displays showed Earth, his home, spinning peacefully in the darkness of space. He had come here with hope. He was leaving with nothing. "The vote is final," announced High Arbiter Veldar, his voice echoing through the massive room. The alien's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Miho had learned meant finality. "Humanity is exiled from Galactic Council space. You have 10 years to remove all your people, all your ships, and all your stations from beyond your home system." Miho felt his hands shake. He clenched them into fists, forcing himself to remain calm. "We have broken no laws. We have honored every treaty. Why are you doing this?" Counselor Theron, a tall reptilian creature covered in silver scales, leaned forward. "Because you are dangerous, human. Your species has advanced faster in 100 years than most civilized races do in 1,000. You consume resources without restraint. You breed without control. You solve every problem with violence." "That's not true." "Silence." Theron's voice cracked like thunder. "We have watched your kind carefully. You fight each other constantly. Even now, after joining us, you cannot put aside your primitive instincts. The Council has maintained peace for 50,000 years. We will not allow your chaos to destroy what we have built." Miho looked around the chamber, searching for anyone who might speak in humanity's defense. The Valerian delegation avoided his eyes. The Crevathi, who had traded with Earth for decades, remained silent. Even the peaceful Luminians, who had seemed friendly, said nothing. They were all afraid. Afraid of what humanity might become. "If you exile us," Miho said quietly, "you are making a terrible mistake." "The only mistake," Theron replied, "was allowing you to join us in the first place. The vote is called. All in favor of permanent exile." One by one, lights appeared on the chamber walls. Blue lights for yes. Red for no. Abstentions showed as white. 44 blue lights appeared. 3 white. 0 red. Miho closed his eyes. It was over. "You will have 10 years, Veldar continued. "After that, any human presence beyond your soul system will be considered an act of war. A quarantine barrier will be erected to ensure compliance. This session is concluded." The holographic projections of the alien dignitaries began to fade. Within minutes, Miho stood alone in the empty chamber, the weight of an entire species' future crushing down on his shoulders. Back on Earth, billions watched the transmission. In Seoul, people gathered in the streets, staring up at screens mounted on buildings. In New York, the stock markets crashed within minutes. In Mumbai, riots broke out as panic spread. But in a command center deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Admiral Park Hyun did not panic. She stood before a wall of monitors, watching as council ships began moving into position around the Seoul system. Her face was expressionless, but her mind raced with calculations. "Ma'am," said Colonel Lee Jaiwan, approaching with a tablet. "They're building the barrier. Energy readings suggest it will be fully operational within 72 hours. How many of our people are still outside the system?" Hyun asked. 16,000 personnel on various stations and colonies. Another 43 ships in transit. Bring them all home. Emergency protocols. I don't care what they have to leave behind." "Yes, ma'am." Hyun turned back to the monitors. She watched as the first segments of the quarantine barrier began to take shape. Massive generators positioned at intervals around the entire Sol system, each one projecting a beam of energy that connected to the next. Link by link the cage was being built. Within 3 days it was complete. A shimmering wall of energy now surrounded humanity's birthplace, cutting them off from the galaxy beyond. That night, Miho stood on a balcony in Seoul looking up at the stars. They looked the same as they always had. But he knew the truth. Those stars were no longer theirs to reach. His assistant, a young woman named Song Yunji, stood beside him. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. Miho was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a cold, determined smile. "We build," he said. "The council thinks they've imprisoned us. They don't understand. They've given us time. Time to grow stronger. Time to prepare. And when we're ready, we won't ask permission to rejoin their galaxy. Then what will we do? We'll build our own." 5 years had passed since the barrier went up. Earth had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Dr. Choi Dae-hoon stood in his laboratory on the moon, staring at holographic displays that showed the quarantine barrier's energy patterns. He had been studying it every day for 5 years, mapping every fluctuation, every pulse of power. The council thought the barrier was a prison. Daehoon saw it as a teacher. Run the simulation again, he told his assistant, Kang Sumin. The hologram flickered, showing how council ships passed through designated checkpoints using specific frequency codes. Humanity had learned much by watching. They had learned how the barrier worked, what powered it, and most importantly, they had learned that council technology was not as advanced as everyone believed. They're using outdated quantum matrices, Sumin said, shaking her head. This technology is at least 500 years old. Why haven't they upgraded? Because they haven't needed to, Daehoon replied. When you're the strongest force in the galaxy for thousands of years, you stop innovating. You stop improving. That's their weakness. Meanwhile, in the shipyards orbiting Jupiter, Chief Engineer Han Yuna watched as the first wave of new warships took shape. These were not like the ships humanity had built before joining the Council. Those had been designed to fit Council standards, to be acceptable to alien eyes. These new ships were built for one purpose, to win. How many are operational? Asked Admiral Park Hyen, who had come to inspect the construction. 87 heavy cruisers, 240 destroyers and over 500 support vessels, Yuna reported. Another 300 are under construction. At current production rates, we'll have 2,000 combat-ready ships within 3 years. Hyen nodded slowly. And the new weapon systems? Functional. We've installed rail guns that can fire projectiles at 0.3 light speed. Energy shields stronger than anything the Council uses. And the AI-assisted targeting systems make our accuracy rate 98%. Good. Keep building. We'll need every ship we can get. On Earth itself, the transformation was even more dramatic. The Unity Accords had dissolved old borders and merged all nations into a single government. Resources were no longer wasted on competition between countries. Every mine, every factory, every scientist worked toward the same goal. In schools, children learned advanced mathematics and physics alongside basic reading. Universities operated 24 hours a day, training the engineers and soldiers humanity would need. Medical research extended human lifespans to over 200 years, ensuring that experienced personnel could serve longer. The population had grown from 8 billion to 15 billion in just 5 years. The expansion generation, they called them, children born in exile who grew up knowing they had been cast out of the galaxy unfairly. These children were hungry, ambitious, and angry. Park Soyoung, now Chancellor of the Unified Earth Government, stood before the Global Assembly to deliver her annual address. Billions watched from every corner of the planet. 5 years ago we were exiled, she said. The Galactic Council looked at humanity and saw only danger. They saw our ambition and called it chaos. They saw our strength and called it violence. So they locked us away, expecting us to either destroy ourselves or fade into obscurity. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we have not faded. We have not fallen apart. Instead, we have united in ways our ancestors only dreamed of. We have built ships that would make the Council tremble. We have developed technologies they said we were too primitive to understand. We have grown stronger in our cage than we ever were outside it. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Soyoung raised her hand for silence. The Council made a mistake when they exiled us. They gave us a common enemy. They gave us a purpose. And they gave us time to prepare for the day when we will no longer accept their judgment. In his lunar laboratory, Dr. Choi Daehoon's console suddenly beeped with an urgent alert. His eyes widened as he read the data. Sumin, get Admiral Hyen on the line immediately. What is it? The barrier just flickered. For 2.3 seconds, it dropped to 40% power. A malfunction? Maybe. But look at this. He pulled up long-range sensor data that had been captured during those brief seconds when the barrier weakened. These readings are from beyond our system. Council space. Sumin leaned closer, her face going pale. Those are weapons signatures. Massive ones. And debris fields. Lots of debris. There's more, Daehoon said grimly. He magnified the image, showing strange biological readings. Enormous creatures moving through space, unlike anything in any known database. The Council is at war. And from these readings they're losing badly. Within an hour, every major leader on Earth was in an emergency meeting. Admiral Hyen displayed the sensor data on a massive screen. The Council pulled their forces back to fight this threat, she explained. They've abandoned the outer territories. They've probably forgotten we even exist. Chancellor Park leaned forward. Which means the barrier might not be reinforced if we found a way through. Dr. Choi believes he can create a controlled breach within 60 days, Hyen confirmed. Then we have a decision to make, Park said. Do we stay hidden in our cage? Or do we take this opportunity to step back into the galaxy? Admiral Hyan's expression was hard. If we go out there, we don't go as refugees begging to return. We go as conquerors building something new. The vote was quick. Humanity would break free. And the galaxy would never be the same. The breach opened with a sound like thunder tearing through space itself. For 10 years, the quarantine barrier had surrounded the Sol system like an impenetrable wall. Now, thanks to Dr. Choi Dae-hoon's calculations, a section of it collapsed inward, creating a gateway wide enough for ships to pass through. Captain Lee Min-jae stood on the bridge of the TNS Indomitable, humanity's new flagship, and watched as the stars beyond the barrier came into view for the first time in a decade. Behind his ship, 500 warships and 2,000 support vessels waited in formation. All systems green, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Park Jina. The fleet is ready to proceed. Take us through, Min-jae ordered. The Indomitable moved forward, crossing the threshold where the barrier had once stood. Sensors swept the area immediately, searching for Council patrol ships or automated defenses. They found nothing. The space beyond was empty. Where are they? Gina asked quietly. Fighting for their lives somewhere else, Min-jae replied. Which gives us exactly what we need, time and space to expand. The human fleet dispersed according to plan, each battle group heading toward a different star system. Their orders were clear. Establish colonies, build defenses, and maintain absolute communication silence. The Ghost Protocol, they called it. Humanity would expand like a shadow, leaving no trace for the Council to follow. Within 6 months, humanity had claimed 15 star systems. Within a year, that number grew to 32. Each system received the same treatment. Mining operations, orbital stations, defensive platforms, and colonies on habitable worlds. The Terran Colonial Authority worked with ruthless efficiency, transforming empty systems into fortified strongholds. But it was in the Kepler 186 system where things became complicated. Commander Shin Hanna led the colony ship Prosperity into orbit around Kepler 186f, a green and blue world that looked remarkably like Earth. Scans showed no intelligent life, perfect conditions for human settlement. They began landing operations immediately. 3 days later, refugee ships arrived. They were Valerian vessels, battered and damaged, limping into the system with failing engines. The same species that had voted for humanity's exile now came seeking shelter. What do we do? Asked Hanna's second officer, Kim Tae-young. Our orders are to maintain silence. If we help them, they might report our presence. Hanna stared at the refugee ships on her display. Sensors showed over 10,000 Valorians aboard, mostly civilians. Women. Children. Running from something that had destroyed their homeworld. Establish communication, she ordered. The Valerian captain's face appeared on screen, a female with pale blue skin and 4 arms, her expression desperate. Please, she said through the translator. We need fuel and medical supplies. Our people are dying. We will pay whatever you ask. Where are you running from? Hanna asked. The Swarm. The Void Swarm. They came from beyond the galactic rim 6 years ago. They consume everything, planets, ships, entire species. The Council tried to fight them, but we're losing. Hundreds of worlds have fallen. Billions are dead. Hanna made her decision. You can dock with our station. We'll provide what you need. Thank you. Thank you so. The Valerian paused, her eyes widening as she got a better look at Hanna's uniform. Wait, you're human. But that's impossible. Humans were exiled. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't have ships like these. A lot has changed in 10 years, Hanna replied coldly. The Valorians docked, and human medical teams went to work immediately. It was during these relief efforts that one of the refugees, a young Valerian named Lyra, asked to speak with Commander Hanna privately. I need to tell you something, Lyra said, her voice shaking. Something the Council doesn't want anyone to know. The Void Swarm, we could have stopped them when they first arrived. But Counselor Theron convinced the others to wait, to study the threat before responding. He said we had time. He was wrong. By the time the Council mobilized, the Swarm had grown too strong. Why are you telling me this? Hanna asked. Because the Council is asking all refugee groups to report any unusual activity. They're looking for resources, for allies, for anything that might help them survive. When they learn humanity not only survived but built an empire in secret, they'll come. And they won't come asking nicely. Hanna felt a chill run down her spine. How long do we have? Months. Maybe less. The Council is desperate. Back on Earth, Admiral Park Hyen received Commander Hannah's report with grim determination. She immediately called an emergency meeting with Chancellor Park Soyoung and the military leadership. "The Council is going to find us eventually," Hyen said. "When they do, they'll see what we've built and they'll want it. Our ships, our technology, our resources. They'll either try to take control again or try to conscript us into their war." "Can we hide longer?" asked General Kwon Min-soo. "Not if we want to keep expanding. Every system we claim increases the chance of discovery. And if the Void Swarm is as dangerous as the reports say, hiding might not save us anyway." Chancellor Park stood, her face set with resolve. "Then we don't hide. We prepare for contact. But we do it on our terms. Increase fleet production by 50%. Fortify every colony. And start sending scout ships to observe Council space from a distance. When they find us, I want us ready." 3 months later, a Council scout vessel entered the Kepler 442 system, performing a routine survey. They detected human energy signatures on the fourth planet, a thriving colony of 50,000 people, protected by orbital defense platforms and a patrol fleet of 30 warships. The scout ship's captain, a Krevathi named Zeln, stared at his sensors in disbelief. "This is impossible. Humans were exiled. They shouldn't even have ships capable of reaching this system." "Should we report this?" his communications officer asked. Before Zeln could answer, 12 human destroyers appeared on his sensors, surrounding his ship from all sides. A transmission came through. Captain Lee Minji's face appeared on screen. "Council vessel, you are in Terran Dominion space. Power down your weapons and communication systems immediately. Any attempt to transmit will be considered a hostile act." Zeln's hands trembled over his controls. "Terran Dominion? What is that?" "You were exiled." Minji's smile was cold. "We were. 10 years ago, you locked us in a cage and told us we were too dangerous to live among you. Well, congratulations. You were right." The transmission ended and the human ships closed in. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had not spent their exile waiting to be forgiven. They had spent it preparing to be unstoppable. The Council scout ship never made it home. Captain Lee Min-jae gave the order personally, and the vessel was destroyed with all hands aboard. It was a cold decision but necessary. Humanity was not ready to reveal itself, not yet. But word spread anyway. Refugees talked. Traders whispered. And within months, rumors reached the Council's core worlds. Rumors of ghost ships bearing unfamiliar markings, of new colonies appearing in abandoned systems, of a mysterious force calling itself the Terran Dominion. By the third year of humanity's expansion, they controlled 147 star systems. The population had grown to 60 billion, spread across dozens of worlds. Massive shipyards orbited every major colony, churning out vessels at a rate that would have seemed impossible just years before. Admiral Park Hyen stood in the command center on Earth, reviewing reports from across the Dominion. Production numbers, population growth, military readiness, all of it pointed to one undeniable truth. Humanity had become a major power, and they had done it in complete secrecy. Until the Battle of Kepler 442. The Council fleet arrived without warning, 300 warships led by Fleet Commander Dravis, a veteran Krevathi officer. His orders were clear: locate the human presence, assess their capabilities, and if necessary force them back into the Sol system by any means required. What Dravis found shocked him. Kepler 442 was not a small outpost. It was a fortress. Orbital defense platforms ringed the planet like a crown of thorns. Mining stations harvested resources from 3 moons. And protecting it all was a human fleet of 97 warships, led by Captain Lee Min-jae aboard the Indomitable. "This is Fleet Commander Dravis of the Galactic Council," his transmission began. "You are in violation of your exile. Surrender your ships and evacuate this system immediately, or we will use force." Minji's response was calm. "This system is Terran Dominion territory. You are the ones trespassing. Leave now and we'll forget this happened." Dravis could not believe what he was hearing. "You dare threaten the Council? We outnumber you 3 to 1. "Numbers aren't everything," Min-jae replied. "But if you want a fight, we'll give you one you'll never forget." The Battle of Kepler 442 lasted 4 hours and 17 minutes. The Council forces attacked in traditional formation, ships arranged in neat lines, firing energy weapons in coordinated volleys. It was a tactic that had worked for thousands of years against every enemy the Council had ever faced. It failed completely against humanity. Human ships moved in unpredictable patterns, breaking formation and reforming with bewildering speed. They launched thousands of autonomous drones that swarmed Council vessels like angry insects. Railguns fired solid projectiles at incredible velocities, punching through energy shields that were designed to stop laser fire. And most devastating of all, human AI targeting systems achieved hit rates that seemed impossible. Within 2 hours, the Council fleet was in full retreat. Within 4 hours, it was destroyed. Commander Dravis died when his flagship exploded. Only 16 Council ships escaped, limping back toward their territory with tales of humanity's terrifying power. The news reached the Council's core worlds within days. Shock turned to panic. How had the exiled humans become so strong? How had they built an empire in secret? And most importantly, what did they want? Chancellor Park Soyoung called an emergency session of the Terran Congress to address exactly that question. The Grand Chamber in Seoul was filled with representatives from every human colony, their faces appearing on holographic displays. The Council knows we exist now, Soyoung began. They know we're strong. Soon they'll come to us, not with warships but with requests. They'll ask for our help against the Void Swarm. They'll promise us anything we want in return. We should refuse, said Admiral Hyan firmly. They exiled us. They tried to contain us. Let them face the consequences of their decisions. But millions of innocent civilians are dying, argued Ambassador Kim Mi-ho, who had returned to service after years of retirement. Entire species are being wiped out. Can we really stand by and watch? They would have watched us die, Hyan shot back. They voted for our exile. They imprisoned us like criminals. Why should we save them? The debate raged for hours. Some argued for isolation, let the Council fall and build something new from the ashes. Others argued for intervention, not to save the Council but to save the innocent lives caught in the war. It was a young delegate named Oh Seo-jun who finally spoke up. He represented the expansion generation, those born during the exile who had never known life under the Council. My parents told me stories about the exile, he said. About how the Council judged us for being too violent, too aggressive. They said we were dangerous. And you know what? They were right. We are dangerous. But not in the way they thought. He paused, looking around the chamber. We're dangerous because we refuse to give up. We're dangerous because we turn prisons into empires. We're dangerous because when everyone else gave up on us, we didn't give up on ourselves. The Council is dying because they became weak, comfortable, and afraid of change. If we help them, it won't be because we owe them anything. It will be because we're better than they ever were. The vote was called. It was close, but the interventionists won. Humanity would help fight the Void Swarm. But there would be conditions. 3 days later, a Terran diplomatic vessel entered Council space for the first time in 13 years. Aboard was Ambassador Kim Mi-ho, now 80 years old but still sharp as ever. He carried with him humanity's terms. The Council delegates who met him were a mixture of desperate and humiliated. Councillor Vren, who had replaced the late Theron, spoke first. Humanity's survival is unexpected. Your military victory was impressive. We come to ask. We know why you're here, Mi-ho interrupted. You want our ships, our weapons, our help, and you'll have it. But first, the Galactic Council will be dissolved. Immediately. Shock rippled through the Council chambers. Dissolved? Vren repeated. That's impossible. The Council has existed for 50,000 years. And in all that time it never learned to adapt. It never learned to change. That's why you're losing this war, Mi-ho said coldly. Humanity will help you, but we won't serve under the same broken system that exiled us. When this war ends, we'll build something new. Something equal. Something that doesn't cast out species for being different. And if we refuse? Mi-ho smiled. Then good luck fighting the swarm alone. We'll survive either way. The question is, will you? The Council had no choice. They agreed to humanity's terms. 1 week later, the Terran Armada entered Council space, 2,000 warships strong, carrying the banner of the Terran Dominion. Alien species watched in awe and fear as the fleet that should not exist passed through their systems. Humanity had returned to the galaxy. Not as exiles begging for forgiveness, but as an empire that could not be ignored. The Void Swarm's Central Hive Fleet was larger than anyone had imagined. Thousands of biological ships, each one the size of a city, moved through space like a massive living organism. They had already consumed 47 species and hundreds of worlds. Now they converged on the Council's core territories for the final assault. Captain Lee Min-jae stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the combined fleet assemble. Human ships formed the center, 2,000 Terran vessels bristling with weapons. Around them gathered what remained of the Council forces, another 3,000 ships from dozens of different species, each one bearing the scars of previous battles. "This is it," said Lieutenant Park Gina quietly. "Everything we've built leads to this moment." "Then let's make sure we win," Minjae replied. The battle began when the swarm detected the fleet and immediately changed course to attack. Massive biological creatures moved with impossible speed, firing bioplasma that could melt through shields and hull alike. Council ships opened fire first, their energy weapons striking the swarm creatures but doing minimal damage. The aliens had thick organic armor that regenerated faster than traditional weapons could destroy it. Then humanity's weapons entered the battle. Railguns fired solid projectiles that punched through the creature's armor like paper. Kinetic missiles, accelerated to near light speed, struck with devastating force. And most deadly of all, the Prometheus Array, a weapon Dr. Choi Dae-hoon had spent years developing. It used the same quantum energy that had once powered the quarantine barrier but weaponized. Beams of pure energy tore through space, disintegrating everything they touched. The swarm recoiled, surprised for the first time in their invasion. These new weapons actually hurt them. But the swarm was vast, and the battle became a grinding war of attrition. Ships exploded on both sides. Entire squadrons disappeared in moments. The fighting lasted for 3 days without pause, and casualty numbers climbed into the millions. On the second day, Counselor Vren's flagship was surrounded by swarm creatures. Human ships rushed to assist, but they were too far away. It seemed the council leader would die. Then a council cruiser, a Valerian vessel commanded by an officer named Lyra, threw itself between the swarm and Vren's ship. The cruiser took the full force of the bioplasma attack, its shields failing instantly, its hull rupturing. Lyra transmitted one final message before her ship exploded. "Tell the humans, tell them we're sorry. Tell them they were right about us all along." The sacrifice bought Vren enough time to escape, but it cost Lyra and her entire crew their lives. Admiral Park Hyen watched the battle from Earth, seeing the casualty reports stream in. The Terran Dominion had lost over 800 ships, 40% of their fleet, millions of human lives. But the swarm was faltering. The Prometheus Array had destroyed their command ships, breaking their coordination. Individual creatures began to flee, scattering in all directions. "Target the remaining hive ships," Hyen ordered. "Don't let them escape to rebuild." The battle ended on the 4th day. The swarm was not completely destroyed, but it was broken. Scattered remnants fled to the galactic rim, no longer a unified threat. The cost had been staggering. Trillions dead across the galaxy, entire species extinct, hundreds of worlds left lifeless. But they had won. In the aftermath, the survivors gathered at the Valerian homeworld, or what remained of it. Billions had died here, but billions more had survived thanks to the evacuation efforts. Now representatives from every remaining species assembled to decide what came next. Chancellor Park Soyoung addressed the gathering, her voice transmitted across the galaxy. "The Galactic Council is dead," she said simply. "It died the moment it chose preservation over progress, safety over freedom. It died when it exiled humanity for being different. But from its ashes we can build something better." She paused, looking at the alien faces around her, some grateful, some resentful, all exhausted. "We propose the Terran Accords. A new federation where every species has an equal voice. Where advancement is celebrated, not feared. Where differences are strengths, not threats. No single species will hold power over the others. Not humans, not anyone." Counselor Vren, humbled by the war and by Lyra's sacrifice, was the first to agree. "Humanity saved us when they had every reason to let us die. They earned the right to shape what comes next. I vote in favor." One by one, other species agreed. Some reluctantly, some eagerly, but all recognized the truth: the old way had failed. It was time for something new. The Terran Accords were signed 3 months later on Earth, in the same city where humanity had once received news of their exile. Representatives from 93 species gathered in Seoul to witness the birth of a new galactic civilization. Ambassador Kim Mi-ho, now 94 years old and frail, was given the honor of the first signature. His hands shook as he signed, but his smile was genuine. 13 years ago, they told us we were too dangerous to live among them," he said softly. "They were right. We were dangerous to their stagnation, their fear, their weakness. We proved that exile doesn't destroy the strong. It makes them stronger." Captain Lee Min-jae was promoted to Grand Admiral and given command of the new Federation Defense Force. Dr. Choi Dae-hoon's Prometheus Array technology was shared freely with all species, helping to rebuild destroyed worlds and defend against future threats. Admiral Park Hyen retired, finally able to rest after years of constant vigilance. On Earth, a memorial was erected in Geneva, a massive wall carved with the names of every being, human and alien, who had died in the war against the Void Swarm. Millions of names covered the surface, each one representing a life lost in the fight for survival. At the dedication ceremony, Chancellor Park stood before the crowd with a young girl beside her. Her granddaughter, born during the war, part of the new generation that would inherit this changed galaxy. "Did we build an empire, grandmother?" the girl asked, looking up at the memorial. Park smiled, remembering the anger, the fear, the desperate struggle that had brought them here. "No, child. We built something better. We built a home. Not just for humans but for everyone." Above them, ships from 100 worlds crossed the sky. Freighters carrying trade goods, passenger vessels bringing tourists, science ships exploring new frontiers. The quarantine barrier was gone, dismantled and turned into resources for rebuilding. The Sol system was no longer a cage but a crossroads, Earth no longer an isolated world but the beating heart of a new civilization. The galaxy had tried to bury humanity. They had not known humanity were seeds. And now, from that burial, an entire garden had grown. The end.